So, welcome everybody to this exploration. Let's imagine that we're in a ua'a, which is the Samoan word for a canoe, and we're going to go exploring the waters of the celestial waters of the recent Ring of Fire Lunar New Year eclipse. Usually, with a new moon, you're looking at the energies lasting for about 1 month. But when it comes to an eclipse, the energies last 6 months and actually sometimes more. So this information is not late, even though it's quite a few days after the Ring of Fire solar eclipse. So what I'm going to be covering is symbology, sacred geometry patterns, and stories from the myths that are covered in the celestial bodies that show up in the sacred geometric patterns of this Lunar New Year. As you'll already know, it's the year of the fire horse, and I just wanted to reflect on the energetic signature of the fire horse. We can kind of get an idea just by visualizing a fire horse, speed, intensity, dynamic, but also potentially chaos, because there's a lot of energy there. It's young fire energy. And I've put here the actual solar period. So in the Chinese system of time, traditional system of time, they have 24 2-week solar periods. And the solar period for the fire horse began on the 4th of February. And then the first new moon was the new moon eclipse on the 17th of February in the Northern Hemisphere and the 18th of February here in the Southern Hemisphere. I also wanted to reflect on this word, revolution. So there are two meanings for this word. The first is really related to the planet Uranus. Uranus is very much a revolutionary energy. And Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. And this Lunar New Year eclipse was in the sign of Aquarius. And then the other meaning of revolution is, literally a revolution, something that turns around. So this is the next revolution of the sun and of the moon for this Lunar New Year. So we've got, so I've got the sun here for the revolution revolving. So it's another turning of the sun that we're moving into for a whole year. So here we have the eclipse where it is on the zodiacal wheel. So this is Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and so on around the wheel. So this is the basis of an astrology chart, having the zodiac wheel around the outside. And I've just put here on the right the dates for each sign. And that is to really highlight that the zodiac was used as a way to tell time before we, started to do that with clocks and watches and everything else. We used to watch the sky. So the sun for the solar eclipse was in Aquarius. So it was at 28 degrees and 49 minutes or 50 minutes, according to some astrologers. And every sign has 30 degrees. You can see them here for Aquarius. So you've got 10, 20, 30 degrees. And it was right at the very end of that 30 degrees. So that tells me when it comes to the time of the year, that it occurred at the very end of this period, that is the period for Aquarius. And sure enough, that is the date. The 18th of February is the date that the solar eclipse occurred here in the southern hemisphere, 17th of February in the northern hemisphere. So that's just like an orientation piece of information that will become, you'll understand the relevance of why I've highlighted this as we go through. And this is why, because your own sun, your birthday, which all of you will know, your birthday actually connects you to the patterns and the songs of the cosmos. The other planetary placements do as well, but I've chosen to hone in on the sun because it is the core identity for everybody where their sun is, and everybody knows their birthday. So here we go. Here are the dates that the patterns that I'm going to go through, the sacred geometry. These are the dates. If your birthday falls in any of these dates, and I know that Neutron and Host, they both have their birthdays in this group of dates. So I'm going to pay particular attention to the points in the geometry where your guys' birthdays are. And I've just done a little example down here as we go through where I will highlight dates and the patterns. Another thing I'm going to be covering is Sabian symbols. Now, I don't expect you to read this all in a big rush now. Long story short, every single degree of the zodiac wheel, 360 degrees, has a symbol related to it. And the symbols were a channeled download by a gifted clairvoyant, Elsie Wheeler. And they were downloaded by her in just one day in 1925 in Balboa Park, San Diego. And I use the original titles of the symbols, and then I use the headline summary from a modern British astrologer, James Burgess. He gives headlines and summaries, and I'm going to use those, but he also has produced a video for every single symbol, and the videos are around about 20 minutes each. So if you have one of the points, one of the symbols or one of the points of the patterns, you may want to go and look up, excuse me, the Sabian symbol on his website and tune in to his transmission, excuse me, for that symbol as it applies to you. And here is his website down here. It's James, whoops, there's no dot there, beg your pardon. It's just James Burgess, no dot.com. And then you can come back to this. I'll share the recording afterwards so you can come back to this to read this in full. Okay, with all of that preamble, let's start, shall we? So here we have the eclipse at 28 degrees 49 minutes. As I said, 17th, 18th of February, depending on which hemisphere you're in. And the symbol, I love the symbol for the solar eclipse in the beginning of the Lunar New Year is a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. So for a symbol to indicate and bring in a new year as a new beginning as well, this is a gorgeous symbol. And James has a headline for this, or I guess this is like the stuff I have in bold from him is almost like something between a mantra and a headline. So it's shift your spiritual level up a notch. Don't know about you guys, but I've kind of really felt that since we had the eclipse. And then he's got here shifting our spiritual level. It has a little bit of a summary there that you can read for yourself. So now we're moving on to the patterns, and the patterns, I always start with a focal point. And the focal point for this pattern, which is known as a grand trine, the focal point for this pattern is the sun and moon. The sun and moon together forming the new moon, and also being near this horseshoe looking symbol here is the lunar north node, the moon's north node. And its proximity to the sun and moon is what causes an eclipse. If one of the nodes, there's a north node, this is the north node, and then the south node is exactly opposite. If either of those nodes are near the sun and moon at a new moon, it will be an eclipse. So for this pattern, as I said, the sun and moon is the focal point. The sun and moon, as I said, are in Aquarius, and this leads to an asteroid called Isis in the air sign of Gemini, and then connecting over to another asteroid called Pandora in the air sign of Libra. So this is what is known as a grand air trine. And the trine energy is a harmonious flowing energy. So this is a flowing, harmonious pattern. And as I said, I've put the dates here. I've done a pretty tight sphere of influence. So if you're born between 15 to 19th of February, 15 to 19th of June, 19th to 23rd of October, then this pattern, you will get the impact of the patterns for this eclipse and New Year through whichever point, whichever body is sitting on your birthday. So let's look at the descriptions here. So we have the sun and moon. The sun is known as the creator. The moon is known as the nurturer. So that's a beautiful combined energy. And they're connected to Isis, who represents motherhood and nurturing. And then over to Pandora. I'm pretty sure all of you would have heard of Pandora's box. Curiosity, exploration, and potential for chaos. So there's that potential for chaos again that was mentioned in the fire horse energy. I was listening to Keone Hanalei in one of his talks with the astrologer Heather Ainsworth, and he talked about the word pandemonium, which Pandora is, connected to that word, pandemonium. And I really loved his take on the word because he talked about pandemonium. If you think about chaos and the void and how things come out of chaos, he talked about pandemonium being like a quantum leap, the potential for quantum leaps. So I really loved that take on that word, and I resonate with that for this Pandora position in this pattern. So there's not only a grand air trine, there is also a grand fire trine that has Chiron, the wounded healer, Ganymede, and two other asteroids, Atira and Orpheus. So I'm going to go into a bit of detail with these ones, but first of all, I just wanted to point out this is the six-pointed star. It is known as the Star of David. It's also known as a Merkaba and also known as Metatron's cube. And the way Metatron's cube is depicted, usually depicted, I've put here. So Ganymede representing youth, innocence and potential. Atira, that nurturing feminine energy again. And now we've got some music and the power of art and creativity coming in with Orpheus. Orpheus being the bard who played the lyre. Again, here's the selection of birthdays that are under, that this grand fire trine will be influencing. And Atira and Orpheus neutron, I know your birthday is in this period here. So we're going to go into Atira and Orpheus as it goes. So yeah, you might want to pay particular attention to this. So first of all, we have Ganymede is in a very tight opposition with the actual solar eclipse itself. The solar eclipse, as you will remember, in the sign of Aquarius. And Ganymede is sitting on this beautiful symbol, which is the rainbow. Promise of success. Developing certainty that life fulfills its promise of joy. That, gold at the end of the rainbow. And who is Ganymede? Guess what? Ganymede was a beautiful young man, so beautiful that the gods, the supreme god, Zeus, abducted him. And he became the cupbearer of the gods. And then Zeus sent his son Hermes, also known as Mercury, to Ganymede's father. He gifted him 2 swift horses. There's that theme of horses again, right? Swiftness and horse, fire horse. So yeah, he gifted Ganymede's father with 2 swift horses as like compensation for the loss of his son. And in addition to that, Ganymede was actually immortalized in the stars as the constellation Aquarius. So here we have, exactly opposite the solar eclipse, the asteroid that is the cupbearer who became the actual star constellation of Aquarius. All of these synchronicities and how things all interconnected. It's just, the astrology and the mythos, it all just goes to prove that everything is interconnected. And I'm only just at the beginning. So let me keep going. Now we're going to look at the Atira and Orpheus point. Atira is a Native American Earth Mother figure. So again, there's that feminine, nurturing energy. And I'm actually going to read this beautiful story about Atira. Long before rivers carved the plains and stars found their rhythm in the sky, Atira lay sleeping beneath the soil, her breath warming the cold heart of the earth. When Tirawa, the great spirit above, shaped the heavens, he reached down with light and love, and Atira awoke. She rose cloaked in roots and blossoms, her hair woven with prairie grass. her eyes deep as ancient rivers. Wherever she stepped, the land stirred. Green tendrils unfurled and corn sprouted from her footprints. From her heart she gave the first blue corn to the Pawnee, whispering, "This is your lifeblood. Tend to it as you would a child. It will feed your bodies and bind your spirits to mine." Each spring, when the fields are quiet and the seeds press into the dark, the people still say she walks again, barefoot, singing to the roots, and if the wind carries her song just right, the corn will rise tall, and Atira will smile from beneath the husks, ever our mother, ever near. So beautiful, that story. So here again we have, so Uranus being the ruler of this, I'm just going to notch up my volume for a bit. There we go, just making sure it's at maximum. So Uranus is the Sky Father, and here we have an Earth Mother figure, and Uranus being the modern ruler of the actual eclipse and therefore the Lunar New Year. And again we have singing, the theme of singing coming in here. Speaking of which, Orpheus. So those sirens that would, you know, lure sailors to their death with their beautiful songs, lure them to the rocks so their ships would smash against the rocks and sink. Orpheus with his lyre would play beautiful music that was even more beautiful than the siren songs. So that meant that when he was on the quest with Jason and the Argonauts, on the quest for the Golden Fleece, he was playing his music at the prow of the boat. The sailors were all strapped into their, you know, the rowers were all strapped into their seats so that they wouldn't, you know, move to go towards the sirens. But anyway, Orpheus's music was eclipsed, there we go, the word eclipsed the sirens' music. So the actual Jason and the Argonauts passed safely through. And Chiron is also in the story. Chiron was the one that advised for Jason to join, for Orpheus to join Jason on the quest. Otherwise it was doomed to fail. So Chiron was instrumental in Orpheus even being on the quest with Jason and the Argonauts. And there's another asteroid that turns up, Parthenope, and Parthenope is one of the sirens, is a siren. So again, we've got all of these interconnectedness that's happening with these placements in the chart. Okay, so that was the eclipse. Now we're going to look at the North Node, because without the North Node being close to the Sun and Moon, we don't have an eclipse. And what's interesting is that the North Node is very tightly together with Venus. So the symbol for female is Venus. And then the North Node, which looks like a horseshoe, is there too. And they are both sitting on 8 degrees and change. I didn't mention this before, but you basically round up the degree point for Sabian symbols. So that's what I've been doing. So it's 8 degrees and 50 something minutes for the North Node, and that means it gets rounded up to Pisces 9. Yeah. And what do you know? this is the symbol that they are sitting on. So Venus with the North Node that looks like a horseshoe is sitting on the symbol that is for a jockey, for the year of the fire horse. I mean, you just can't make this up, can you? And the motto is be determined to succeed. And it's the spur to attainment, to success. Yeah. I mean, this, I just, fell about laughing when I discovered this was the symbol for Venus. So that's why I had Venus riding the horse as the very first picture that I used to introduce this exploration. So the pattern that Venus and the North Node are the focal point for is a pentagram. So we've had the six-pointed star, Metatron's cube, the Merkaba, Star of David, and now we have a pentagram and or pentagon. A very, so in astrology, this aspect is known as a quintile. So it's a line of creative talent and a line of creativity. And we have Venus in the North Node exactly opposite. As I said, Parthenope was going to turn up, the siren from the, one of the sirens from the Orpheus point. So she is directly opposite Venus and the North Node and is the connection to this whole pentagram. So yes, here's the actual addresses that I was talking about. 8 degrees 51 Venus, 8 degrees 56 the North Node, Parthenope 9 degrees 33. So very, very tightly opposite. Okay, so we have Prometheus, innovation, rebellion. There's that kind of revolutionary energy that Uranus has. Isis again, because she's actually in both the patterns, right? Parthenope, the siren, and Adrastea, and again, nurturing. So we've got a theme, this theme of this feminine nurturing theme that's definitely being repeated. And we also have Black Moon Lilith, who is the female sovereign in astrology. And the reason I'm pointing her out is because she is what they call stationing. So planets and points will appear to go backwards. Everyone knows about Mercury retrograde, which we've just entered into or just about to enter into. So it looks like the planet is going backwards. And when they stop going backwards or are about to go backwards, they will what they call station. And that means they have to stop and then turn around to go in the exact opposite direction. So I like to think of it like imagining someone running forward and then they decide they've got to go in exactly the opposite direction. Well, they have to then plant their foot and turn to go in the exact opposite direction, creating a divot or, an impression in the earth. So that means there's a definite impression and energetic, I guess you could say, strength there. So this female sovereign stationing in this pattern is quite a strong imprint and influence. And again, I've got the dates in case any of your birthdays are on these dates. Take a note of which asteroid or planet is the one that gives you the in to this beautiful pentagram. And you know, pentagrams are quite magical, aren't they? Now I'm concentrating on the connection point. So Isis is a connection point between Metatron's cube and the pentagram. So I thought I would go look at the symbol that she's on. And this is quite a reassuring message that, you know, the being determined to succeed of the Venus and North Node point. And then this is saying, well, you know, whether you succeed or fail, you're being supported through that trial and error process. As you can probably tell, I use the symbols as almost like messages from the celestial object that's sitting on it. And here is the story of Isis, Osiris, which you can have a read of. And, you know, she's also a mother figure, great mother Isis. And the fact that she's, you know, linked to the pentagram and is goddess of healing and magic. And the pentagram is quite a magical symbol. And here we have, it's almost like she's a merger of the Uranus and Earth Mother energies, because she's like queen of the universe. So she has a connection to the stars. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to Chiron. And Chiron, rather than being a literal connector for the patterns, there's a story and the myth connections. But first of all, let's look at the Sabian symbol that he's sitting on. And it's about allowing higher forces to shape our lives. And here's the story or the mythos connection. So you'll remember that Prometheus is also in the pattern, and Chiron was hit by a arrow, a poisoned arrow from Hercules. And because Chiron was immortal, it didn't kill him, it just gave him a wound that never healed. And in one version of the myth, because as with most mythology and, you know, cultural stories, there's always more than one version. And in one version, he was actually prepared to take Prometheus's place, Prometheus being sentenced to be tied to a rock and have a bird pick out his liver every day, you know, living a really horrible Groundhog Day. And Chiron was prepared to take Prometheus's place. And as a result of him being willing to make that sacrifice, Zeus actually granted him mortality, and he became the constellation Centaurus, which is Sagittarius. So when you're looking at the Sagittarius constellation, that is Chiron. Okay, moving on. Now we're going to Uranus, who is the ruler of the eclipse. And also, the reason why I've picked him instead of Saturn to focus on, because Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, Uranus is in a very tight, dynamic aspect with the eclipse itself. So the eclipse was at 28 degrees 49, and Uranus is at 27 degrees, I think it's 36, I think it will come on the next page, but yeah, very, very tightly this is not what's known as a square. So that's a dynamic line of energy, and I'm calling it an active spur. So you can imagine that if you imagine that Uranus, and Uranus even looks a bit like a spur here, right? I mean, a lot of people refer to him as like a oh, what's the word? The things that get television signals and stuff. Can't think of the word at the minute. This symbol of his, which is here, is usually referred to as that, but this also looks like a spur now that I look at it. So if you think of him actually spurring all of the patterns, right, that we're looking at, that's like the line of energy that's kicking them all off. And it's the ruler of Aquarius, a ruler of Aquarius, one of them. So he is sitting on a woman past her change of life experiences a new love. So this is really encouraging, you know, when you think of this as a message for humanity, where we grow up in the way we love and the way we view love, and get beyond the projection kind of love to a more mature, true form of love. And that doesn't, and it's not just restricted to one intimate love. It's, love in its widest sense. So I love that, the Awakener, because Uranus is known as the Great Awakener, is sitting on this symbol for the Lunar New Year. And he is also making a pentagram. So we've got one 6-pointed star, one 5-pointed star, and another 5-pointed star. And again, I've put the dates here. And host, I know that Proserpina is, this is, your birthday is within this point here, 13th to 17th October. So we have, first of all, we have Uranus, the Great Awakener, and a very revolutionary, innovative energy. Then we have Varuna, is unconscious intuition and mysticism, which appropriate to be one of the constituents of a pentagram. Proserpina, power, transformation, and growth. I haven't gone into the myth of Proserpina, so host, you may want to go and look that up, because that is the energy, that is that you're into this pentagram. So yeah, your connection to this pentagram will be flavored by Proserpina. Then we have Mnemosyne, all to do with memory, creativity, and harmony. And then we have Mercury. And Mercury already featured in one of our stories, right, with Ganymede. And Mercury, by the way, Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. And here they are connected in this pattern. And Mercury is known as the messenger. Mnemosyne. So Mnemosyne is connected, she's another mythos connection, because she is the daughter of Uranus and the grandmother of Orpheus. Isn't that nuts? And I've called her the goddess of remembering. So we're in a time of remembering. We're in very, profound time of change, and a big part of that is remembering who we really are. So it's no wonder that Mnemosyne is involved in in the energetic signature of this year. And she is sitting on this symbol. Insights into what to expect of life. So the goddess of remembering is sitting on the symbol that is about insight. And I'm just showing here this, connection. Orpheus, her grandson, and Uranus, her father. So, all of that together, here we go. Here it is, all together. Let's start at the sun and moon, which is the eclipse. Opposite the actual story that's to do with the constellation of the sign of the eclipse. Then we have Venus and the horseshoe figure on the point of the jockey, right? Sorry, I forgot to mention the butterfly and the chrysalis for the sun and moon, like the butterfly emerging. Then we have Mercury, who, delivered those two swift horses to Ganymede's father to compensate for them pinching the beautiful sun to actually pour them their cups of water, or maybe wine, probably wine. Then we have Chiron, who is connected to and is directly, sorry, beg your pardon, Chiron, who is the constellation of Sagittarius and was the one that recommended that Orpheus, who he's directly connected to in the six-pointed star pattern, that Orpheus join Jason and the Argonauts for their quest for the Golden Fleece. Then Uranus, who is the active spur for the eclipse and god of the sky, and father of Mnemosyne, grandfather of, no, beg your pardon, gosh, that means he'd be great grandfather of Orpheus. Right, Isis, who is involved in both the six-pointed star and the five-pointed star. And then Parthenope, who is a siren and therefore, is part of this story with Orpheus. And Atira being an earth mother, that is the counterbalance to Uranus, who is a sky father. And then Isis also being a great mother. So yes, that's my gallop through, and that's the synthesis. And I wrote a little poem for this Firehorse New Year. Venus leaps through sun and moon's ring of fire, spurred by the Great Awakener higher. She rides the fiery steed of the year into a love revolution. Can you feel it's here? A time of love over fear we knew all along, remembering we are our own powerful song. So for me, that kind of brings together all of the influences, and it's about remembering, true love, and that true love really starts with love for yourself and understanding your own power. So now we're going to move on to the sacred geometry. And Metatron, who's Metatron? I'm guessing most of you already know who Metatron is, but here's a summary. He is very much connected with sacred geometry, and he's an archangel, and for some they say he is the archangel. It's not really a hierarchy of angels, but if there was, then he would be the boss. Yes. So when you meditate on his Metatron's cube, it's said to facilitate harmonizing and balancing of your energies. So here we have our New Year's Metatron's cube. And I've just repeated what I've been saying all the way through, where if any of these are your birthdays, then this is going to, you're going to feel the impact of this pattern. And I create, I paint the energies in light or in color because that's how we perceive light, and according to the colors that the ancient Greek polymath Pythagoras, who's known as the father of music and the father of mathematics. So he attributed not only musical notes to each planet, but also colors. So I use the color for the asteroids. He didn't attribute colors to the asteroids, but the asteroids live between, the asteroid belt is between Mars and Jupiter. So the color that I use is the color that is between the Mars and Jupiter color. And I paint in waves. So like when you look at a light wave, this is the shape of a light wave that I'm using. And I'll go back so you can see that transition again. So this is Metatron's cube as what I call a light song. And these pools of light are here because that's where you've got two bodies together. So their colors are blending. And then here's the meaning of Merkaba, light, spirit, body. And then here is the light song for Metatron's cube, the first light song for this Fire Horse New Year. Then we have the pentagram, the one that is catalyzed by Venus in the North Node. And the pentagram, it's like this isn't Vitruvian Man, but Vitruvian Man by Leonardo da Vinci also depicts, you know, the human body as a pentagram. So it's very much an earth-based symbol. And here's our Venus North Node pentagram. And I only discovered this by doing this exploration. I didn't know this before, but because like my work is heavily influenced by Pythagoras, and here we go, the pentagram is actually very key to the Pythagoreans, and they actually came up with the golden ratio. I didn't know that before I discovered this here. And I knew the golden ratio was from the pentagram, but I didn't know that it was connected to the Pythagoreans. And a symbol of health, using it to represent the human body and symbolizing all of the elements. And then through this, discovered that it's also connected to Isis, and Isis is in this pentagram. The Egyptians associated the pentagram with the goddess Isis. And here we have the light signature of this pentagram, which I'm calling an earth star. So it's like us as a star, right? We're beings of the earth and we're stars. And then the Venusian, I'm calling it the Venusian heart light song. And then last but not least, Uranus's pentagram. And I've just done a little table here where you can do a lookup of dates. I started with the sun and moon and then work my way down chronologically and which pattern they are connected to. And then we have the Uranus light signature, which I'm calling the Uranian Soul light song. And I will be doing a 3-minute energetic talisman video very soon and put some music to it so it can be used as a meditative tool. And in the meantime, here's a little taster with a quote from Robert Edward Grant. I don't know if he pinched this saying off someone else, but he's definitely said this: geometry is music for the eyes. And I'm finished. Thank you for being such a, patient audience. And I'm going to stop sharing now. So if there are any reflections, questions, discussion, let's do it.